This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 379. Peter Thomas Fornatel back with you in the Brooklyn bunker, but I'm recording this from the Brooklyn bunker. By the time you're listening to this, I will be at EquestriaCon. Busy Tuesday of activity here in Louisville, or should I say there in Louisville. Recording this in advance because it's going to be such a crazy time down there. And I wanted to bring in a special guest to spend the entire hour with us, a legend in the tournament world. He reminds me every time I call him a legend that the day after that accolade was bestowed upon him in the racing press, his wife said to him the next day, "Hey, legend, go take out the garbage." He's a humble man. He doesn't want to talk about what a big favorite he is to win the NHC Tour, thus becoming the first player to ever win the Tour twice. We'll see about that, but I am very excited to get a chance to bring in Paul Shurman. Let's do that now. And now I'd like to welcome back to the DRF Players Podcast, friend of the show, tournament player extraordinaire, former champion on the national, then it was handicapping, now it's horse players championship tour, Paul Shurman. Paul, how are you today?
Thank you, Pete. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. This is sort of a special show. It's going to be posted during EquestriaCon, so we were looking for some pre-recorded content, and who better, I thought, to catch up with than you, Paul, because not only are your appearances on this program always very popular when you grace us with your presence, but you're also in the midst of a very impressive season once again on the NHC Tour. Now, I know you're a little superstitious about this, so all I'm going to say is you've got a chance. No, I'm not going to. I am going to go farther than that. I'm going to say that you are the favorite at this point to become the first ever two-time winner of the NHC Tour. Talk to us about your season thus far.
Well, I would say that I have a healthy lead, but there are a lot of good players out there, and any one of them could put together a few good weeks and certainly give me a challenge or even pass me. So I am optimistic, but I am certainly don't consider myself a sure thing. You have great players here. You have Karen Carey, who is in second place behind me, and she is having a phenomenal year. She is in second place. She's more than one tournament win away ahead of everybody except for one person. So she's pretty solidly in second. You have other players who are having great years: Dave Snyder, Phil Lamb, Chris Padratz, Brent Sumser, prior tour winner. These are all great players, and they're all capable of doing well in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge and either getting close to me or passing me. So I'm happy with where I am. I would be lying if I told you I wasn't, but they're still these people are really good.
That's for sure.
My year has been amazing. I just the Ross Gallo line, the Tour chooses you. Well, the Tour chose me again when I won the Tour back in 2011. I swore I'd never do it again because it was so draining. It was so stressful, and it came down to the last race or races, and at that year those races were held at Surfside, and I didn't know until those races were over whether or not I would win. This year it could be the same, and then the NTRA is doing me no favors by keep on adding additional tournaments. They have these $75 Friday qualifiers that pick and praise, but they pull in 350 entries through 20. So those mathematically, there's a lot of points being given away. They're like every Friday through the middle of December, so I got to worry about those. It's for my year. You know, in June, I had a couple of good hits. I was my goal at that point was to finish in the top 5 for the first half tour and win my my Breeders' Cup entry. And you know, I was lucky enough to come in first. So then I was like 5th in the overall tour. So my goal was, well, if I win something, if I have a good score, maybe I'll consider chasing the tour a bit.
At what point did you get dragged in definitively?
What's that?
At what point did you get dragged in definitively? Did you know, okay, well, now it's win or bust?
A week later, when I won the Saratoga first Friday contest and got 4,000 points. So then I believe I was in the lead by a bit. So now I'm stuck. And then I played in the. Then I was playing in the Del Mar Internet Contest, which started in July and ended in September, and that's a contest where you play one horse a day. I think they pick the race, and there are 4,000 people in the tournament. I happened to hit the first day, otherwise I probably would have stopped playing. and somehow I hit the 3 highest priced horses at the meet. So for that contest, and I ended up I think 16th overall out of 4,000 entries, and out of the NHC Tour players, I finished 6th. So that got me 2,600 points, and now I'm really stuck. I had a good score at Monmouth, and last week at the Del Mar contest. So I've had success at Saratoga, at Monmouth, at Keeneland, and Del Mar, and Santa Anita. So I can't do any better, I don't think. And if somebody passes me, they are certainly deserving of being tour champion, because I don't know what else I can do. But it's been fun, and now I'll be stressed for 2 months.
Good problem to have, I think. In all, you got to figure the Breeders' Cup betting challenge is where one of your competitors might be most likely to make a move with the idea that it's a in-person contest and the amount of players who should be participating in there. Will you be breathing any easier after that one?
Yes. Yes. Although I think that the setup of the contest, there are only 25 or 30 players who I think are capable of winning that contest. It's a special contest. It takes a lot of strategy. It takes the willingness to lose a very big bankroll on one race, and there are a handful of players who can do that. If somebody chasing me does it, then that'll be great. There are the only person who could catch me with a Breeders' Cup betting challenge win would be Karen Carey. So if she wins that, she will pass me. Otherwise, no one else behind me would pass me with that win. But that's a tournament where people can get a lot of points and cut the gap. Of course, Peter, I could also get some points there too.
I was going to ask: is the tour going to affect your strategy? I mean, is there an idea of laying up potentially to get what you can out of points in there, or are you playing to win?
That's a good question. I'm playing to win, but if I'm in a position where I could lock up the tour, which would be $100,000, that might play into it. It depends on where I am. It depends how much money I have. It depends on the situation. It depends what the leader has. So that's there, because a 10th or 11th or even 15th place in that tournament would enable me to increase my lead. My low score now is 2,400. So for me to add to my total, I need to to get above that. And for me to really affect my score, well, I have to do significantly above that, which is not easy, even in that contest. So I'd like to win. That'd be something to win that tournament. That would really cap off the year. It depends on the situation. It depends on where everyone is. It might depend on what some of the other players who are behind me are too. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
The game within a game, and that would be another impressive addition to your NHC Hall of Fame resume. That's for sure. Throw a BC win on top of everything else.
God. Yeah. Yeah, I never expect to do well in these tournaments. I never expect to win. I just go in and I play, and I try to be in position to win. And this year it fell together pretty well.
Not just this year, Paul, but but it is interesting that it does say more than most players, your strategy. There's plenty of players who go in and have a win or bust attitude. It seems to me from observing your play over the years that underlying the principle of what you do is you've got to be in it to win it and putting yourself in a position to get there. Do you think that makes you different than a lot of players, and how did that strategy emerge from you over the years?
I'm always surprised. Like with the Santa Anita contest last week, I took shots to win early, but I left myself with a shot in the last race. Once I knew what everybody had, what the leaders had, and I had $600 in my last bankroll going into the last race after taking shots. I got up to $600 early in the contest with my first entry. I took shots with my second and third entry, and knowing that if I didn't hit, I'd have $600 to play in the last race. Figuring if the leader had $3,000, I could bet a 6-1 shot or 8-1 shot. If the leader had $4,000, I could play it that way. I like the horse at 5-2, 3-1, and my strategy was to play that horse at exactas enough to get me well over $3,000. So I played $300 exactas with my horse on top of three others, and two $150 exactas. And I ended up leaving out three favorites underneath with the lowest totals because those wouldn't have got me there. So if my horse won, I had a pretty good shot of getting over $3,000, and one of my $150 exactas hit, and I ended up with $3,700. And the funny thing is, I was at the dinner. I had to leave my house before the last race, so I ended up watching the race on my phone in my friend's car, and I sort of knew who won, but wasn't positive who came in second or third. And I couldn't get results until like half an hour later when Nate Newby called me from Santa Anita and said I won. But I was surprised. But I knew what I had. I knew I had 3,700, but I was certain that some two or three of us passed me. And I figured, well, okay, I'll get second or third or fourth. I'll get some good tour points. And ended up winning. So I was surprised that other people didn't hit what I hit or have a major play on the winner.
It can be so unpredictable at the end of these contests what's going to get it done. There'll be times where you think you've won and three or four people jump you, and then the story you tell isn't atypical either. We should point out that though this was the Santa Anita contest, obviously, if you've been following along, but just to underline it, you also had the ability to play online, which has been a cool development in this series and certainly opens it up to people who can't necessarily travel every weekend. And that story to me, that strikes me as vintage Paul Shurman in the sense that the last race is the dollars don't count more than they do in the earlier races, and yet in the way that you play and the way that many play, the dollars almost might as well count for more. And I've seen this with you in mythical money contest too, where you're saving a bullet for the last race, and it's almost like the last race counts more in effect, even if not literally. Where did you develop that idea, and is that an accurate description of how you view the last races, what I sometimes call the anchor leg in tournaments?
It is accurate, and I used to play. There was the Breeders' Cup. Tim Sherman used to give little blurbs about
Yes.
all the entrants.
Yes,
they
those
knew
were
and how
great.
they played. Right, and one of the blurbs he gave me 6-7 years ago is that Paul Shurman, great mythical money player, but that hasn't hit in the live money tournaments yet, and he was right. So I used to play exclusively to wait for the last race, second to last race. Used to play, trying to pass through races, trying to say like a Centennial tournament or Breeders' Cup tournament where there are a number of minimum bets you have to make. I would try to keep as much money as I could by betting 3 to 5 sets to show, 4 to 5 sets to show, and save for the last race. But in the last 4 or 5 years, I've changed the strategy, especially when I have multiple entries. One entry I play as I normally would play it hit big, but I try to save one entry for that last race in case I don't hit big on my other entry. So that's my strategy, but I always have, or try to have enough in the last race to make some sort of play to come in first. This is the same way. You're familiar when I won the Monmouth tournament 2 years ago, the Pick Your Prize. Same thing. I liked the horse in the last race, and I played it. I had like $300 left, and I played it over 3 exactas that would give me the win, and I hit one, and it gave me the win. So I was in a position to win. I knew what I wanted to do, and luckily that time it happened. Yeah.
Just to underline it, it comes from the idea that you know what you need. That's an edge that Correct. I think some players understand intuitively and others don't really think about. But there's an advantage to be had when, you don't know what everybody else is going to do in that race. So you don't know the exact Correct. Final total. But generally speaking, you find value in the notion of waiting to have a pretty good idea, not of guessing where that final number is going to be, but really having a good idea by seeing what the leaderboard is going in. Is that right?
Right. That's correct. And in a contest like last week's Santa Anita, to be in the lead is almost a disadvantage because what do? Do you go to push your lead higher? And if so, how much higher do you want to push it? Everybody is shooting for you. Everybody has that number to shoot for. The leader, when I was going to the last race, had either $2,600 or $2,800. So, I know what I have to get. I know I have to get probably close to $3,500 to ensure myself at least the top 2 or 3 spots. But what does the leader do in that position? Does he not play? Does he play and risk losing position? So, to some extent, to be in a lead in a live money tournament like that is a disadvantage. So, although you'd like to be there,
right?
Because people still have to pass you. It's not easy for people to pass other people. So to be in the lead is an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage depending on what comes in.
And when you're in that position, I think we can get to another one of your famous ideas in tournaments.
Right.
When you're that person in the lead with the target on your back, how do you decide whether to sit or whether to play, and how much?
Well, hopefully you'd have enough of a cushion between you and the person behind you to make a wager that would increase your lead without sacrificing your position. So, if I'm ahead by $300, I would make a $295 bet of some sort on something that I liked to increase my lead a bit. So that would be the strategy there.
And if it was
you have to make a play, but you can't. You have to make a play, but you can't put yourself in a position where that's going to lose you. If nobody hits, you don't want to lose because you bet too much.
The old Jeopardy.
You have to. Correct.
The Jeopardy strategy comes into play. If you didn't like anything, are there times where you just absolutely sit there?
Probably not.
You would pretty much take the difference between you and second.
I would play something. I could play something in that position, which people that don't think about, to place or to show. There are ways, if I don't love a horse, I think it's going to come in the money. I could try to increase that way. Closer in the speed field race that might pay something. I might play the show or place and try to increase myself at least a bit that way. So people, if I increase a little bit, I might still outpace people who are trying to catch the number where I was at.
You mentioned that old bio of you that described you as more of a mythical player than a live bank player. With the way the contest world has changed over the course of even just the last 3 years, with the events shifting so much more in favor of live bank, what is something that you did to change your approach to make yourself more comfortable with live bankroll events once there were so many fewer mythical ones to contest?
I decided to play it like I would play as if I was bidding a race. A few years ago, Breeders' Cup contest it was a Derby contest at Churchill, where I would have waited and waited and waited. I played trifectas and exactas and doubles in the second or third race of the contest and hit that. Previously, I would not have made those plays so early because I'd be afraid to lose my bankroll. But, we talked about my motto, play who you like. I had not been playing who I liked in those contests because my strategy was to wait till the end and see what I needed. So now I'm more apt to play as I would normally play if I was just going to the races and playing things I like. And if I lose, then I lose. But at least I'm taking shots at what I like, and I always will have something left at the end. Always.
We're hitting a lot of Sherman's greatest hits here, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Breeders' Cup contest, obviously very controversial last year, and new rules out that I think are generally getting very favorable reviews, with a few notable exceptions from players who I think generally are looking to support their own agendas. I, for one, am in favor of having players have to play more races. To me, that makes it more of a contest, having meaningful penalties for not making bets so that everybody's playing by the same set of rules. I see that as a positive, but very curious about your perspective. Where are you with these new Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge rules?
I was very disappointed last year, debating whether to play the contest again. But I think with the new rules and the way the betting is set up, I think it should be good. I think it's going to be a good contest. It'll be a contest that's hard to win, but it's fairer, and it doesn't favor people who might wager a certain way that would have been more advantageous to them last year. So I think they're good. I think it's a good change. I think a lot of thought went into them, and I think it'll be good. And they could always be tweaked later on if they don't work. The fact that they were willing to change, make such drastic changes, is nice to see. And they can keep on doing that depending on what happens this year and how people respond and how people bet. So I like the changes.
I do think that creation of the wagering committee and getting them involved was a big positive step, and I think that's a great point, just as we've seen with the NTRA, the ability to continue to evolve and advance based on situations. Hopefully that's something that's also going to be in play when it comes to the Breeders' Cup and the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. And I think this is a contest where we can hopefully see the confidence fully restored after we have a successful running of it this year. Do you have any concerns, or you feel like everything's on the up and up from here on?
I'm going to go in with no concerns, and hopefully that'll be fine. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to play, and we'll see what happens. But I'm not going to worry about that.
Are you?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
The changes and the problems with the Breeders' Cup betting tunnels last year have forced changes or influenced other contests, such as Keeneland, such as Monmouth, to institute their own changes and rules with regard to the issues that arose last year at the Breeders' Cup. So it's a learning experience for everybody, and I think it's good for the sport.
Excellent. Will you be playing from Churchill, or will you be taking advantage of the opportunity to play from away?
I will play. I will be at Churchill. It's a special event. It's a great time. I'm with a lot of friends, and I will always go. It's just nice to be there. I'm a fan of the sport. It's the biggest tournament, and I will be there.
Excellent. You mentioned friends, also in your case, family. How's your brother Bill doing, and how has he been enjoying your success this year on the tour?
Well, he's enjoying it very much because, as you know, we split 50-50 everything. So whenever I win the tour, he will get half of. He plays different tournaments than I do. He's in California. He plays a lot of the California tournaments. I'm at Monmouth. So we basically split the costs. This can get expensive to play in all these tournaments. And we split the winnings. So he's very excited. He is more optimistic and more forthright with his feelings about how I'm going to end up. But he said, you can stop playing now. I said, I can't. No, I can't. I can't. No, just save your money. We'll play some of the money tournaments. I said, I don't think so. But he usually would be on my side, but he has visiting weekend for his son at college this year, so he will not be there, and he might not even be able to watch the races. So, I will be flying solo for a bit. But we will discuss the cards beforehand. But then he will not be there for the first time. I'll be on my own.
I was looking forward to getting a chance to see him, but at least I'll get to see you, so that's good. Let's talk about your handicapping. When we did the book, when we worked on the book, you were such a key interview in the Winning Contest Player all those years ago now. I remember you had a blend of you're somebody who would look at the racing form, but somebody who was also a Thorograph sheet player, if I'm remembering that, and also a believer in Ken Mass's HTR software. How has your play evolved since we had those conversations several years ago? Pretty much the same, some new elements. Where are you these days?
It's evolved, although basically I use less racing form. There are a lot of people who put in a lot more work than I do with regard to handicapping. They look at races. They look at breeding. They watch replays. I do none of that. I've come up with shortcuts, which you need in these tournaments, especially the big ones like the NHC or the Horseplay World Series, where I can pick out horses pretty quickly using the Thorographs and using HTR. So, I look at the setup of a race, which HCR gives me very quickly, and then I look at the sheets. When the sheets coincide with the setup of the race, then that's a play. The reason I think I've had success in the big tournaments, Horseplay World Series, and the NHC is because with such a large number of races that you're choosing from, I'm going to have more situations where those factors from the seats and from HCR match up. Whereas if you have a tournament, like say an online tournament where you've got to choose 10 races, or an on-site tournament where you're choosing to play races from 2 tracks, you might not have any of those combinations of factors matching up. So your angles might not be available when there are less races to choose from. But in like the Horseplay World Series, working in second one year, and the NHC, where I had 3 top 6 finishes, you have more opportunity for your angles, whatever they might be, to become a factor. But basically, I've stayed the same. And it's worked for me, so it's difficult for me to change. Whenever I try to add to it or change, it usually works the opposite. I usually hit a dry spell. So that's pretty much stayed the same since we talked through your book.
It's interesting because we talked about the live bank contests and how many fewer races are in those and how you're having more success. I'm just going to take a guess that you're doing something a little bit different on the handicapping side there, or interpreting the data differently, because you're not going to get that agreement when you're looking at the 8 races on a day's card at Santa Anita, say, versus the 32 races across 4 tracks for a big Vegas contest. Or is it really the same?
I'll tell you the difference. It's the same handicapping. The difference is, for the NHC or for the mythical money tournaments, for the most part, you are looking for value. Although, my theory is if you think something's a lock, whether it be 3 to 5 or 2 to 1, you play it in those contests. But you are looking for value, and you're using angles to find value. A 10 to 1 that should be 4 to 1. Or you're avoiding horses that are 3 to 1 that should be 10 to 1. In the live money tournaments, you're looking for winners, and then you're looking for where to play those winners. So I'm not necessarily looking for medium price horses or high price horses. I'm looking for horses that I like, that I can maybe combine with others that will get me to where I want to be. So it's the same. It's a little different strategy. I'm not looking for, I could be looking for 5 to 2 shots in a live money tournament, and then looking at ways to hook them up with other horses. Whereas I'm not really looking for those 5 to 2 shots in a mythical money tournament, although I'll take them if I see them.
It's very interesting. It reminds me of a conversation we've had on the show a lot about what I would describe as the 2 different types of horse players, 2 different types of successful horse players, and sometimes the twain meets here. But the idea that there are players who are selection-oriented, who almost see the world, or at least see certain races, in a deterministic fashion of, this is going to happen, I think this will happen, and can plug into that, versus somebody, and I always use Chris Larmy, our friend Chris Larmy, as the example of this. They take a much more probabilistic approach. If they don't have an odds line, a value line written out on every horse in the race, they at least intuitively understand that, and that probabilistic approach is very similar in my mind to the value-oriented approach you're describing for mythical money, whereas the more deterministic way seems a little bit more maybe like what you're talking about in live bankroll contests. Does that sound about right?
That sounds right. That sounds, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a different tournament. People have to realize that every tournament is different. Every tournament has its own rules. Every tournament has its own strategy. They're all at least a little different. So you have to approach each tournament in a different way. You can't play the tournaments the same way. I know people who good handicappers, good tournament players, who play the live money tournaments the same way they play the mythical money tournaments. They're looking for 8 to 1s or 10 to 1s in a live money tournament. Why are they doing that? They don't need 8 to 1 or 10 to 1. They need a 2 to 1 hooked up in a double with a 3 to 1 in the next race.
Right.
You have to adjust the way you play based on the tournament and based on the rules. And people don't necessarily do that.
What's your go-to pool in a live bank?
My go-to pool, the one I like. First of all, we talked about this too. Yeah, you try to win a tournament with as easy a bet as possible. You know, if you could win it with a win bet, you win it with a win bet. If you can't win it with a win bet, then you go to the exacta bet. If you can't win with the exacta bet, you go to the trifecta bet. If I had more money for the Santa Anita contest and not had to play exactas, I could have done it just with a win bet. I would have done it that way. My go-to in a live money contest, now that they've introduced daily doubles to a lot of them, that would probably be my favorite bet. It gives me a lot of options if I hit the first race. The way I got to $600 on my bankroll at Santa Anita was I loved the horse in like a third race, and I had a big double going into it. Hit the first set of the double, and back wheeled the horse I liked in the second leg, so that if it came in second, at least I'd collect something. So I had some options there, and I actually got headed for that the big double, but ended up with $600 from the back wheel. So yeah, I do like the daily doubles. It gives me options and it gives me a chance for a big hit. That was my go-to bet at this point.
Makes perfect sense for all the reasons you mentioned. I wanted to pause on HTR for just another minute. In this day and age where we hear so much about computer betting, and actually as this podcast goes live on the DRF feed, I'm going to be doing a panel at EquestriaCon about computer wagering, which of course has a lot of different elements. There's the betting part that we hear so much about, but there's also the idea of using a computer to automate the handicapping, which is basically what HTR does. So I was just curious if you've used it at all in your day-to-day play in the parimutuel pools, or if you really use it more as a specialist, and if it gives you any insight into what the computer bettors are doing in the parimutuel pools as well.
Well, Pete, it's almost embarrassing with regard to how I use HTR. You know, I look at the discussion section and the people discussing different strategies and different ways to bet, and I don't understand any of that. I use HTR as a shortcut to quickly determine how the race is going to set up, who's going to need the lead, who's the best closer, how many speed horses there are, how many horses are going to be fighting for the lead, who's going to be first out of the gate. That's the only thing that I use it for. And then I hook it up with the thoroughbreds. I don't understand what they're talking about with their algorithm, and I have no clue. But people do understand that, and they use it to their advantage. I know, Tony Zoe. He talks about algorithms in his program, and I have no clue what he's talking about. But he's a great tournament player. I know Dave Snyder, who's a great tournament player, has his own program, but Dave Snyder, who I've known for years, I was at the NHC a few years ago, and I've taken a break in one of my long handicapping sessions, and I see Dave Snyder in the casino just hanging out. I said, Dave, taking a break? He goes, no, I'm just hanging out. I'll go to bed. I'll let you out. I said, handicapping? He goes, no. My computer picks out my horses. I don't do anything. I punch the numbers, and then I can do what I want. It's a great time. And to me, that's foreign. That's in a way though, it's almost not something I want. It's too easy. Does that make sense? That would be too easy. Some players use these programs to pick the horses for them. And to me, that's no fun. To me, that's no challenge, although I guess it can work on occasion. But I like the challenge of putting things together and figuring out angles and beating other people and figuring things out better than other people do. So again, with regard to HTR, I use it for one specific purpose, There are people who can look at the racing form and get the exact information and instantaneously see the exact information that I'm getting from HCR just by looking at the form. I can't do that.
Right.
I do not have the capability. My brother can do that. I can't do that. And it's worked for me, so I'm not, I can't complain. The reason I started using HCR, I used to just be a sheets player. In the NHC, one of the NHCs at Red Rock, there was some first-time starter that won at like 4-1 odds, and the rumor went around the room that HCR people had it. HCR people had it. So I said, well, you know what? I'm done. I'm doing this. I'm gonna get the HCR.
If you can't beat them, join them at that point.
Exactly. I'm done with this. They had this one too. So I started using it. And when you use HCR, now I've got some people on mentoring for the NHC, and they use HCR. I tell them, this is what I use. And they use HCR better than I do because I don't know what they're talking about. But to me, it's a shortcut, and helps me. It helps me put things together in a quick way.
And, I know what you said before, but I will just reiterate that there are plenty who do use HTR and even Thorograph in conjunction with DRF. Can't forget who's paying the bills on this podcast, Paul. And
I know that. That's why I was reluctant to say that. I'll tell you when I do use the DRF. I use it when I'll use it for the NHC and for something like the Horseplay World Series. For breeding questions, I look at the pedigree information that in the DRF. So I do use it for that. So I sort of use a combination. I do use a combination of all three, including the daily racing form.
You mentioned the mentoring you're doing, which is a really cool program that the NTRA is sponsoring. Curious to hear how that's been going, and if there's a particular lesson in particular you feel like you've been able to impart to the folks you're mentoring.
I enjoy it a lot because I like new players coming in, and it's a hard game. It's a difficult game. There was a bump in membership for the for the tour for the NHC after the horse player TV series.
Sure,
they had a big bump. Then they had a drop because people realized this is hard. This is a hard game. It's not as easy as it might have looked on TV. So anytime I can bring new players in or help new players out, I try to do so. The game, I love playing the game, and the game only lasts as long as there are players, and we need new players. Young players like Kinshin or Tony Zoe or help the game because they help attract a younger crowd. What I tell them is to just keep trying. I tell them, one of my guys said to me, the best he did well in a tournament a couple of weeks ago. The best advice he gave me is that you're never more than 2 horses away from being close to the lead in the tournament, and you never give up, and you're never that far out, and not to panic. And that's good advice. That's advice I give to everybody. Just because a cap horse hits in the first instance of the tournament doesn't mean I have to play cap horses the rest of the time. You stick to your plan. We've talked about this too. You have a plan. You stick to it as long as it possibly can, and you only vary from it when it can no longer get you where you need to be. And also, of course, you got to be prepared. You got to know every race in the tournament before you start playing, because if you haven't handicapped every race, then you don't know whether the horse you like in race 4, which is 8-1, is going to be a better value than a horse that might be coming up later. Handicap the whole card, and we've also talked about this, handicap backwards, because sometimes you don't get a chance to, because of circumstances, because there are 180 races to look at for the NHC, maybe you won't get a chance to finish doing the end of the card. So start backwards and work forward. So you always know what's coming up later on. So usually handicapping on the go, so to speak, at the start, at least you have to compare with later on, so you know what's coming up later on. So you can judge the value between what's going on now and what you might like later.
And we also discussed how in some ways those points in a later race are worth more. Why not look at that race when your brain is the freshest?
Correct.
There's a logic to that too.
Correct. especially at the live money tournament. You better know that there's not 1 to 5 shot in the last race or odds on favor that look like locks in the last couple of races. You have to know where you're going to make that last bet, and sometimes that last race isn't favorable. There was a tournament recently where because of the rain, the last 2 races were off the turf, 5 horses. So you have to know. You have to know what's coming up.
Any tips on players for how they might try to stay organized?
I think you either probably are organized or you aren't. I know I have a very close friend of mine who has a folder for every track.
That's interesting.
That's bound. A friend of ours. He comes to the NHC. He brings a printer with him, and he brings several reams of pre-punched paper. So that when he prints up,
didn't Scott go digital by now? Is that who you mean?
No. Our friend Mitch.
Oh,
our friend Mitch,
he's great too.
Yeah, he's great too. But he comes and he goes to his room, and there are reams of paper there, and he sits in his Ralph Brennan bathrobe in front of the computer.
This may be too much information. We may have crossed the line here.
Yeah. Printing up stuff, but he's got it. That's organized. It's important to be organized during the tournaments, especially if you have more than one entry. You've got to keep track of what you've played, how much you have left in each ticket, how many plays you've made in each ticket. There's so many times when you see people, on their hands, knees, and the floor, looking for tickets, trying to figure out what they played, not knowing what they bet, all the time.
Desperate.
All the time. For the NHC, for my two entries that I usually have, I label everything. I have. This is organized. I have the paper clips, where I mark each play I make. I put an O for optional, or a M for mandatory, and I make M1 or O3 or M7, and I keep them together in one place, tied together. So, and even with that, I still wait a minute. Let me count again. Boom, 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 boom. But it's better than searching through everybody's entries who are thrown out in the middle of the table. It's easier to have that and figure that out than to do that than to go through the stress of looking for old tickets.
I was curious if a spreadsheet factors into this for you at all.
I have. I will make up not a spreadsheet. I'll make a minor spreadsheet if I have 2 entries in something or 3 entries in something, like the $75 tournaments where I have 3 entries. I will have sort of a spreadsheet and mark off how my plays are and what I'm doing. But I always have a list of the races in chronological order, which is especially important for the NHC because at certain points of the tournament there could be 20 races going off in an hour.
Yeah. And
it's very easy to get lost. So if you have a chronologic listing of all the races, then you can check them off as they go on. And if there's some delay, then you can notate it on your sheet. So you know where you are, you know what's happened, you know what's coming up. also, it's important to know on that sheet, I put the number of races left. So starting with 90 races, 90 through 1. So I know if I have 4 plays left, I got to know there's more than 4 plays left. So very often people get stuck. Wait a minute, I have 5 plays left, only 3 races left. So it's that's something else to do as far as being organized.
I love that idea, and I could really see that working in spreadsheet form. You could even change the color of races that have happened, races that are, going to be in the next hour versus, and maybe another color for what's coming up way down the line with different notations.
Right. I also, of course, color code the different tracks. So
yes, that's a good one too.
For what good it does. But so those all go into it, and that's just years of being at the NHC and playing these huge tournaments. But it also you can use that in smaller tournaments too.
You talked about multiple entries, and you mentioned certain tournaments that allow 3 entries. Now, this answer may be different, probably is different, if we're talking about what we call on our site an all-in contest versus a live contest. But how different is the strategy for you when you're playing 3 entries in a tournament versus when you're playing 2 entries in a tournament?
Well, what kind of tournament are we talking about?
Let's start. Yeah, it's 2 different answers, right? Let's start with a live format, and then I'll follow up with the all-in question.
I don't think there's much difference between 3 entries and 2 entries, except you're a little freer. You can take more shots. The more entries you have, the more shots you have. That's why I like the 3 entries for the Santanita tournament. I could. I can take big shots without worrying about not having ammunition to use later on. I just think that the more entries you have, the more in the allotment tournament, the more free you can be, and the more chances you can take because you're not blowing all your money early. With regard to fake money tournaments, mythical money tournaments. If I had 3 entries, what I would do is, the problem with mythical money tournaments when you have 3 entries is splitting your entries, is splitting your tickets. So the horses that are like best, say the mythical pick and praise that are coming up every Friday now. If I really like the horse, I'll play it on all 3 entries, not irrespective of the odds. And then I will put, for the other races, the horse I like best on 2 of my entries, and my second best on another entry, or a horse that might have a shot at higher odds, my 3rd entry. And then I will vary them. I will go AAB, ABA, BAA with regard to, So I have my best choices sort of spread out on tickets 1, 2, and 3, and I have my best choices on tickets 1, 2, and 3 on 2 of my picks. So you have a better chance of at least having your best picks line up somewhat at some point. If I have no clue in a race, I will play 3 different horses on the 3 entries.
I like
and
it.
then hopefully if one of them hits, and then if one of them hits, then hopefully because of my other strategy of putting my best 2 on different tickets, I'll have something that'll amount to something.
Yeah, it's almost like multi-race betting
Correct.
strategy at that point.
Correct.
Correct. I like it. I like it a lot. Here's another question about the mentorship program. Have you learned anything from your mentees at any point during this process?
Everyone I haven't learned anything handicapping wise, but I've learned that these people, these players, if they understand what's going on, they usually ask for mentors when they're frustrated and when they don't know what they're doing, and when they keep on getting their heads beaten in in tournaments. So once they learn how to do it and learn some strategy, they love it. They love the game. I've had people coming up to me at tournaments thanking me. Oh, thank you so much. You opened this up for me. You told me this. You told me that. So, this is a game that people like. This is a game that if people understand how to play it, understand what to do, and take it for what it's worth, and enjoy it for the fun and the camaraderie, that we can get more people into the tour, get more people playing tournaments.
That's great. Well, you mentioned horse players before, and I do think TV can be a big tool to do that. JK and I, we're trying to do our part to get some handicapping tournaments back on TV in a format that will hopefully have some legs and get you some more mentees for 2019 and beyond if things go well. Anything else you can think of beyond TV? Another tool we might use to try to get a hook into some newer players.
I don't know. I'm encouraged by the fact that there are some women who are doing very well on the tour this year. Karen Carey, Christy Moore. We could promote those people, those women, to show that you can be a woman and be successful. And the younger people, we need to promote the younger people, to show the younger people who don't really understand the game, or the game, they think the game is too slow for them, that it's a lot of fun, it's profitable, and there's a lot to offer. It's got a lot to offer. So I think using these people to help promote the game, that might help.
Karen,
get a few women on your show. Get a few women on your show. Yeah.
Karen gave me one of the great compliments I've ever received when she did so well when she won Belmont and was interviewed and talked about how she enjoyed listening to racing podcasts, and said the quote was something like, enjoys racing podcasts, particularly Pete Fornatal. And I was gratified not only that she singled me out, but also that she didn't mention Kinchin. That was very pleasing to me.
Well, Karen Carey, I know her. I've hung out with her a little bit. The funny thing about Karen Carey is I sat with her accidentally. I was at a tournament at Aqueduct, and I sat down, and this nice woman next to me, hello, you're Paul Shurman? Yes, my name is Karen. I'm just starting out. I'm just learning this game. I admire you. I said, well, good for you. I'm glad you're playing. Keep it up. Keep trying. Don't get discouraged. So she's there. She was telling me, I just missed this. I hit this. I said, you're good. 4 days later, Mitch tells me, by the way, the woman next to you, she finished fourth. I go, what? She finished fourth? Yeah, I had no idea. When we were playing, she's so humble. Then she wins the Belmont tournament. Then she wins a big pick and pray. Then we're at Saratoga, and after I win, she comes up to me, oh, congratulations, I like the same horse, but didn't have enough money to play. And I said, well, good, you're doing great. And she came in like fifth. I had no idea.
It's great. Her story's been a lot of fun to follow. We need to get her on the show at some point. Really, one of the great stories of the year. As are you, my friend. What a season it's been on the NHC Tour. We're definitely wishing you luck. It'll be a very fun story to follow from here through the end of the year. We're going to be putting this podcast up on the Tuesday of Breeders' Cup week. For an event like the Breeders' Cup, how much work do you do in advance? We have pre-entries now. The tools you mentioned that you use, not available yet. When do you start digging into those races? I mean, I'm assuming it's too early to ask you for your thoughts on them.
It is way too early. Probably, Tuesday. I used to look at the pre-entries. I used to try to handicapping early. Sometimes you get married to a horse very quickly. You get married to a horse too early. And I just like to wait. I like to see what the weather's going to be. I like to see. I don't like to look too early. But you get burned out, too. There are going to be 14 horses in all these races. It's a lot. So I don't really start looking until probably Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday. Then I'll start looking. But again, a lot of the stuff I use at the HTR probably won't be out until after that. But I'll look at the sheets.
You go ahead.
It's a very difficult tournament. all the horses, they all look the same. They're all shooting. All the trainers are shooting for these races. There aren't as many angles as you would find in a regular tournament at a regular day. It's tough. It's tough.
Time for one more question for you, and then I'll let you go. We're gonna do a biographical one because I don't remember the answer to this. How did you get involved in tournaments in the first place?
I was sitting at home in 2000, sitting on my couch. My wife was there, and we were watching the OTB channel, and there was an ad for a tournament at Belmont over the weekend. And I asked my wife, "Do you mind if I go?" "I'll go. That's the this weekend. I'll go." She said, "Fine, go ahead." And it was held at that time. The Belmont tournament was held at that time in a tent in the backyard. And I walk into the tent and I see people using computers. I said, "Oh my God, look at this! There's people using computers to handicap." And I sat at a table, and the people at the table were all into it. All really. One guy had a radio program on horses. Another guy wrote books on horses. There was Steve Terrelac, who's I think out in Santa Anita now and very involved. And I met one of the guys that was sitting next to me. Said, "There's this kid coming. I know his father. He's a great handicapper. He's a great handicapper." And it was Steve Wilson Jr. who sat at my table at Belmont. And we became friends, and we qualified together in 2003, and he won the NHC that year. Sat next to him.
Folks who don't understand, if you don't know your handicapping history, you don't realize that you're listening to the story that's the equivalent of Mick and Keith running into each other on that train platform.
Right.
It's amazing to have two of the most successful players in NHC history, if not all of handicapping contest history, randomly meeting. Steve Wilson Jr., of course, going on to to win the NHC and then to finish second at the NHC, winning even more money for that second just a couple of years ago. And then Paul, whose achievements we've been discussing throughout the hour. That's an awesome story, and I do think you had told me that, but I had forgotten it. I don't. When you first told me that story, I don't even know that I'd met Steve Jr. Very serendipitous, Paul, and it's been a pretty great 2 decades since. Much deserved success, adapting with the times as you've shared with us. It's been a real pleasure. My 5 years now covering contests, your friendship and your following your exploits has been one of the true pleasures of the job, and I thank you for everything that you contribute.
Well, Pete, and you've been a great asset to tournament play too, with your articles, your enthusiasm, and your promotion of the sport. It's really you've been a real positive influence for the sport too. So we appreciate that, and we thank you for that too.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere, Paul. So thank you very much. Check is in the mail. I do appreciate it very much. All right, I will let you go, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be keeping an eye on you. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk come the end of the year as well, and I'm sure in between.
Anytime, either way, whatever happens, anytime.
Thank you, my friend, Paul Shurman.
Thank you, Pete.
There you have it, Paul Shurman, ladies and gentlemen. Always such a pleasure to bring him in and get to pick his brain. Some real insights in there, whether you're brand new to the tournament game or an experienced player looking to improve. He really gives us great information about how he approaches the game, and really is a tremendous resource for all tournament players. And thank you to Paul so much for taking the time once again to join us here on the podcast. And that is it for today's show. I'll thank JK. He wasn't here today, but, he's always an inspiration, and I'm sure he won't mind that I made fun of him to Paul. So thank you, JK. Thank you, producer Craig and AJ. Thanks to Travis Stone and Willie Nile for the work they do up top with our theme song. For more of Willie's music, check out willienile.com. For more from Travis, just turn on the Churchill Downs simulcast feed. You'll hear him on there, him being the voice of the Kentucky Derby and all that. Unusual schedule this week. We will be back tomorrow, tomorrow and Thursday, doing the co-productions of the Breeders' Cup podcast with Matt Bernier. So actually, I say we'll be back tomorrow. It might not be till Thursday that both of those shows go live, because I think we're recording late tomorrow. But that should be fun. I hope you join us. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.